creating a space and place, like map for the story going home. She talks about going back home and being with like her family during Thanksgiving, and also her grandmother passing away, and just kind of feeling like foreign going back home. But also as she's like traveling like in the airport during her like delayed flights and everything, she starts to encounter more, I guess, African American people. And to her, she feels like she's more of a safe place, because like they're making like eye contact and gestures to each other, and because she's going back home south. And with like the tone, it seems as though it's kind of like this, like she talks about going back home and traveling and everything, and like because her grandmother passed away and like the holiday, this and that. And she goes to the church service, and she feels this revelation happen to her, as like something, the spiritual phenomenon's happening to her during that. And I think that and then like talking about her grandmother's like upbringing, sort of, and then her husband John, Emily's husband John, meeting the like her aunt and everything, like those cultural differences and like their own perspective on other races, like coming into their home, like their space. I think the tone it's hard to, it's informative, but I felt it was more powerful during like the service, and when John met her aunt, and how he had won her aunt's respect, given that she could care less about, I guess, a white man coming to her home. She might have had these fixed ideas about that, and like the land, it's different, like when she's going back to the South versus like when she's in the South versus when she's back home in Virginia, and she talks about like even what the airport like in Virginia offers versus like in the South, like what they offer, and the different class differences, and like the food, like how the food is like this cultural celebration and like ceremony. So like they talk about like eating like like black eyed peas and all that stuff, and how she's coming back home and she's remembering all these other the past time that she had there, like as a little kid, and now reflecting on it as who she is, coming back home, like an educated woman from Virginia coming back home, and her take on everything, and her, I guess, her educated perspective on like things such as like the preacher's sermon, the climax with that, and also like when the family after the service, they walked around like the city, and she would talk about that and her perspective on that, and the flow in time. It's like it's happening like now, but she's like reflecting back in time and reflecting back on her grandmother's like time, like when she was a kid, her grandmother was a kid, and like when Emily was a kid, and them now. So it's like she's like that's happening, and also like we're reading the story, so it feels as if like we're sort of we're reading this flow that's happening. So she's traveling, she's meeting up with her family, going to the service, talking, and then she goes back in time to talk about like her grandma's upbringing, this and that, and then goes back to her present time where the story ended. And so, what is the sun of the galaxy? Um, it'd be her and her story, I guess. And then the gravitational pull is the the meaning behind what she feels and her perspective on everything, and how powerful it is, like as an adult, and how she's understanding the class differences, the traditions, the normative narrative that she is embodying in her story at this time. And it kind of it just kind of orbits around, her and her life and what's taking place now, and how she's kind of understanding where she came from, and like who she is now, and coming back home and reflecting on herself as she's sort of going back in time. And then she goes back in time again with her grandmother story, if that makes any sense. So yeah, definitely the map, especially when talking about like the food, like she's expressive with like the food that they eat, and like how they will come together and eat these certain southern like cuisines, and like the soul food almost, and how that's part of coming back home for her. And just that smell of that, or just that coming together and talking, and is, yeah, it's her taking everything in as an adult, and having these different ideas that she might have had when she was a little kid, doing all that. But now she's like married, in an interracial relationship, and how that is not really conflicting, but it's merging together. And I think thinking about the map does help me connect the theory and the connections to the story. Helps me think of it in a different way for sure, rather than just like explaining like what happened. So, yeah.